Well, there you are, and here I am. Vic Solo back with you once again for another riveting episode of the Karaoke Chronicles. Now, when we last left, I talked about all the bars and clubs and restaurants and things that I performed at. And I wanted to touch upon the nursing homes and how I got started there. Now, it would take way too long to talk about each and every nursing home because there's not a nursing home, I don't think, in southeastern Massachusetts or Rhode Island that I didn't play at least once. So we're not going to go individual. We'll just go in time frame. How did it all start? I don't think I ever talked about that here on the channel before, so let's touch upon that. Well, it started back in 1995. Now, I'd been singing, obviously karaoke and done stuff for school and stuff like that before the year 1995. But 1995 is when I started on the nursing home circuit, and let me tell you how that got started. I was working at a nursing home. Yes, I was working at a nursing home at that time in the environmental services department, which encompasses housekeeping and laundry. I was doing a little bit of both at that time. And I noticed that they would have entertainers come in. I won't name names. I mean, some of them might not even be around anymore. But I saw these wonderful vocalists and wonderful musicians that would come in. They would either play piano or guitar or even bring in a karaoke machine. And they would sing for the residents at this particular nursing home, which at the time was called Hill Haven of East Bridgewater, later to become Sachem Skilled Nursing and Rehab. Had a few other names before that, but might even have a different name now because it's been a long time since I've been there. But in 1995, it was called Sachem Skilled Nursing and Rehab. Well, actually, it was called Hill Haven at that time. Then it became Sachem later on. So the activities director at that time was kind of on the hunt for new entertainment because she had the same 3 or 4 people that came in all the time, and they were good. The residents enjoyed them, but she was looking to have somebody different come in. And I was like, well, can I do it? I happen to sing. I enjoy singing. I said, and I already work here, so I won't charge you anything. Because I was working at the nursing home at the time, so I was just like, give me a shot. Let me come in and do my thing. So I did a various artist show, which I would later christen the Mixed Bag, and you name it, Elvis, Neil Diamond, Village People, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr. I even sang "Walking the Wild Side" by Lou Reed, Chattahoochee by Alan Jackson, and "You've Lost That Love and Feeling" by the Righteous Brothers. I mean, it was a well-crafted, just Mac Davis, well-crafted set list. For my first time out in a nursing home setting, a lot of fun. And it was cool because I knew the residents, they knew me because they saw me every day. So I came in, and it was in the evening. It was at 6:30 in the evening, and did a show. And it all took off from there. That was where it started. And I would then go on to do every other month for the first year or so. And then even when I left, I would still come back, excuse me, and I would do shows without not asking for pay, of course, because they had limited budgets, and of course I was working, I was working a regular job, so this is the place that gave me my start. This was a place that I had already started doing for free in 1995. So in the ensuing years, the following years, I kept it on the free. But subsequently, activities directors changed. And there was not a director, but an assistant that came in later and said, Vic, you should go out and do this and get paid for it because you're good. Go out and do other homes. I'm like, okay. So, as fate would have it, Sachem, as it became known, was owned by first by Hill Haven Healthcare, then it was owned by a company called Kindred Healthcare. So what I first did was I looked and saw what other homes were in their network. In other words, owned by the same corporation. And that's how I found Colony House of Abington, and how I found Embassy House of Brogden, and Blue Hills Nursing and Rehab of Stoughton, and then others that belonged to the same. There was one in Wareham, and then there's a couple others that belonged to the same company, Fall River, New Bedford. So little by little, still working full time, but I would still on the side kind of inch out. And so the Kindred Healthcare, formerly known as Hill Haven Healthcare, was the corporation that owned a lot of the homes in the area and helped me get started. But at the same time, I was like, well, let me look and see what other homes are around the immediate. I was living in Middleborough at the time, where I grew up, And let me see what other homes are nearby. Middleborough had a couple of homes at Oak Hill Nursing Home, and they also had. That might have been Nemasket Healthcare. How could I forget Nemasket? They might have been called something else at the time, but ultimately became Nemasket. And then in the neighboring town of Lakeville, they had Island Terrace. And then going towards, like I mentioned, Wareham, nearby towns of Mattapoisett, or was it Marion? It was Marion. Marion had Sipican Healthcare. And Fairhaven had something court. Somebody help me. Something court that they had. Alden Court. Thank you. Alden Court Nursing. So I did some shows there, and it was the mixed bag. But then as I got my confidence, I was like, and then I was getting booked. I'm like, well, I also offer Elvis. And I got to do Elvis. So that was the beginning. The beginning was the mixed bag or Elvis. Everybody's going to start somewhere. And the mixed bag was always a good introduction to a new place when I would, do a show. It was always a good way to start off and get acquainted with the audience. And then ultimately, Elvis, when I mentioned to them I would do it, because I would always do an Elvis song in the mixed bag. And when I mentioned that I had a costume and I could do Elvis, then we came out. And what's funny is the suit that I had at that time was not the colorful jumpsuits that I have now. I started out with the black leather 68 comeback special suit, which I ultimately outgrew because I like to eat. But that's how that all got started back in 1995. And it would progress into other homes in the area, out into cities and towns like Brockton and Dartmouth, and I can't remember where else I would go at that time. Taunton, Raynham. So I'm pretty much staying in the South Shore, South Coast area, I should say. In a future episode, we'll talk about how that progressed. But ultimately, I would do the homes that I just mentioned and the cities and towns that I just mentioned. And it was only a part-time sidebar while I worked full-time. Later on, I would end up bringing my talents a little further out. I would venture to Stoughton and Randolph and, into the early 2000s. Sharon, Massachusetts. These are the places where the ball got rolling. And again, in the beginning, it was just mixed bag and Elvis. Later on, I would add Legends of Vegas, where I would put on a suit but no tie. I would have the open shirt and the open collar, and that was people like Frank Sinatra, Wayne Newton, Tony Bennett, Sammy Davis, Louis Armstrong, like Harry Connick Jr. Crooners basically, Engelbert Humperdinck. So I added that. This was where I established Nemasket Healthcare in Middleborough, and also Southeast Rehab in Easton, Massachusetts. They were my two longest running accounts, the two places I performed at the most in all of Massachusetts. Now, I did mention Rhode Island in the introduction. Rhode Island comes later on, and we'll do that in the next episode. Next episode, we'll talk about Rhode Island. But staying in Massachusetts now, ultimately, I would end up going to work for, now we're jumping to the 2000s now. Now I would ultimately go on to work for Best Buy for a few months shy of 4 years. And I would still do this on the side. And I would still hit all the nursing homes I just mentioned, plus some more, because people knew people who would tell me, hey, Vic, have you ever been to this place? Have you ever been to that place? Have you ever been to this town and this city? And that's when the nursing homes really, in Massachusetts, really started to pick up. So now I'm venturing into like Bourne and towns on Cape Cod, over the bridge, so to speak, and Wareham, doing like the Tremont of Wareham, and doing there was another one that was owned by Kindred. I can't remember the name of it, and it's probably changed once or twice since then. But it was on Indian Neck Road. I remember that. So that was a home I would do, and then there was Fairhaven's Rest Home, not a nursing home, Fairhaven's Rest Home, which was in Middleborough. And then there was the Westview Rest Home in West Bridgewater, and the Bridgewater Nursing Home. And then the Life Care chain, the Life Care Centers of America had locations in Rainham, Plymouth, and one in New Bedford that was actually not called Life Care of New Bedford. It was called the Oaks. That's where I met Mary Lima, who's a friend of mine to this day. And she'll figure into the story later on when I march into Rhode Island. And then we also went to Life Care of West Bridgewater, Rainham, Plymouth, and the Oaks. It steamrolled. And Golden Living Center, that was another one. In Taunton, there was Wedgmere, was part of the Golden Living chain. Golden Living of Attleboro, Golden Living Garden Place, which was also located in Attleboro. So we had two places in Attleboro. And then there was the Sacred Heart chain. There was not Sacred Heart chain. They were it was the Sacred Heart Diocese, and they had Madonna Manor in North Attleboro, and then they had a place over in New Bedford. I think it was just called Sacred Heart of New Bedford, and then there was one in Fairhaven as well. So I was really getting around at this point, and sometimes I would either have to take an additional day off from work. Like an additional day or vacation day, or I would just double up shows. Something would be like, "Hey, could you come in the morning?" So I'd go in the morning and the afternoon. Another place that comes to in the town of Wrentham. One of my favorite places that I ever played in Wrentham was Serenity Hill Nursing Home. They were kind of a hip crowd over there. They liked my Phil Collins and / Genesis tribute. They liked my John Lennon tribute show and things like that. They like the '60s and things like that. And later on, as more shows came about, I added more. Neil Diamond would be the next edition after Legends of Vegas, and then as karaoke music became more consumer friendly and available, I was able to add other shows. Like I was able to do. I used to call it Jukebox Memories. Now I call it Cruisin' Classics. Hits of the '50s and '60s, and I would do a disco show. And then I would get together with some friends and do the Village People. Honest to God. And then I would do, so many different kinds. At the suggestion of someone very close to me, my wife Lisa, at that time she was like, "Hey, have you ever thought of doing a country show?" And I'm like, "Hey, that's a good idea." To Cowboy Sam. He wasn't called Cowboy Sam yet. I'll tell you that story when we get to the Council on Aging centers, the senior centers, because that's where his name comes from, one of the centers. But at that time, I just called it Vic's Country Show. And believe it or not, I would actually end the show with Hillbilly Jim, the wrestler. His entrance music, "Don't go messing with a country boy," getting tongue-tied. There was no karaoke track. I just sang along to the track, and everybody would clap along. So you couldn't really hear Jim's vocals, but even if you did, he and I's voices kind of blended a little bit. So that was cool. That was a lot of fun. And then later on, I remember a few places I would do tributes to like David Cassidy and Barry White. Those didn't really take off. Nobody else really asked for them. I did a Tony Orlando, Tom Jones split tribute show, which I still do today. And I started that one back in the early 2000s. I think Easton might have been the first place I ever did that one. Because I remember they brought me in every month, just like Nemasket. So I had to come up with something different all the time. Of course, Nemasket, if it was up to them, I would have been Elvis every time. But I offered them other things, and then if I offered them something and they went, we'd like to see you do Elvis, hey, I'm getting paid, so I'm going to do Elvis, And that was really the genesis of my nursing home experience. And then I said, like I said earlier, ultimately I would march into Rhode Island. But we'll get to that one later, because the next chapter from here, from the nursing homes where we started, the next chapter is going to be the march into the senior centers, which has a very unique beginning. And we'll get into the wonderful stories of the senior centers. Not only would I play just a regular show in a morning block or an afternoon block, but some of them would have me come in for special events. So glad you tuned in to the Karaoke Chronicles once again, the nursing home edition. It's a wonderful thing to talk about these memories, because I only do it part-time now here in Central Florida. I have like 4 or 5 places that I play on the norm, but it's wonderful to go back and remember and reminisce. and thank you for tuning in. Please feel free to subscribe, hit that bell for the notifications when a new video comes up, and I will see you all real soon. Y'all be good now.